Hey, good news for the big guy. The 9th richest men in the country last year were two brothers who inherited a giant oil and chemical company from their dad. If you combined their wealth, they were tied at number 9 for richest guys in the country. If you combined their wealth, the two brothers' combined fortune was behind only Bill Gates and Warren Buffett in this country. But as singletons, individually, last year, David Koch and Charles Koch were tied to be the 9th richest men in the country. This year, moving on up. They are tied for 5th this year. Woohoo! Moving on up to the top, to an even more deluxer apartment, even higher up in the sky. The name David Koch rings a bell for you because of David Koch's politics. Mr. Koch ran for vice president as a libertarian in 1980. He garnered a below infinitesimal proportion of the votes, and then in disgust just started bankrolling right-wing causes instead of running for office anymore. He bankrolls stuff that includes Americans for Prosperity. He has bankrolled Freedom Works and other groups that have organized the Tea Party movement. You'll remember Americans for Prosperity is the group that ran bus tours against health reform that said that reforming health care would be the equivalent of the Holocaust. David Koch may not have succeeded in getting his head put on your money like Caesar, but he is even richer this year than he was last year. So if you liked him bankrolling a big proportion of what you see in American politics right now, buckle your seatbelt for the year ahead. American politics right now is turning out to be great news for the big guys. As you may have noticed, Michael Steele isn't exactly running things for the Republican Party right now. That's a picture of him recently on a trip to Guam and Saipan, the kind of places that he has been spending time so as to stay far out of the way of any actual Republicans actually running for impending actual election. Michael Steele has since embarked on a Michael Steele Goes to the Hinterlands bus tour, where the Republican Party chairman plans to visit dozens of congressional districts that do not have a competitive race this fall. No matter how much fun it is to talk about Michael Steele on cable news, and it is fun, no matter his job title as head of the Republican Party, neither Michael Steele nor the Republican Party proper are running the Republicans' election efforts this year. Frankly, it's more of a Karl Rove joint. Karl Rove's political group, American Crossroads, is pledging to spend $52 million on behalf of Republican candidates for these elections this year. $52 million. $52 million. $500,000 of Tea Party money ousted an incumbent senator in the Alaska primaries this year. Karl Rove is planning on spending 100 times that much. And the good news for the big guys is that he's raising it all from billionaires. Not kidding. Salon.com's Justin Elliott took a look at the Karl Rove's group's financial disclosures for the month of August. And it turns out that out of the millions of dollars that Karl Rove's group raised last month, 91% of it came from just 3 sources. 91% of the money that Karl Rove raised last month came from 2 billionaires and 1 company that's owned by a billionaire. 91% of the funding for Karl Rove's giant outside group that is dumping tens of millions of dollars into the elections for Republicans, 91% of their fundraising last month came from 3 billionaires. And that's actually off pace for them, because the month before 91% of their funding came from billionaires, the month before that, 97% of their fundraising came from billionaires. 8 candidates endorsed by the Republican Party's official Senate campaign arm lost their primaries this year. 8 candidates who had been anointed by the Republican Party proper and had Republican Party support lost. Michael Steele kicked off campaign season by banishing himself to Saipan. The official Republican Party is not functioning in these elections in any meaningful sense of the word, functioning. But the Tea Party movement is doing a lot, thanks to David Koch, billionaire. And the $50 million plus giant elephant in the room in terms of TV ads and get out the vote and other Republican campaigning this year is Karl Rove's operation, which, thanks to good reporting by Justin Elliott, we know is also funded by billionaires. Basically by 3 guys, 3 billionaires. There are only, as far as we can tell, and this was fun to look up today, as far as we can tell, there are only 403 people in the entire country for whom illionaire can start with a B. 403 people in the entire country. It is not a large constituency, but boy howdy is it a well-represented one. Joining us now is Washington editor of The Nation magazine and MSNBC contributor, Mr. Chris Hayes. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you.
Great to see you, Rachel. I love it when you guys tease to me after the commercial break. It really makes me feel good.
Hold on. Here comes Chris. We practice it in the news meeting. I jump out from behind a desk. Yeah, I wear glasses. All right, so lots and lots and lots of money, and only a handful of people giving it to Karl Rove's political group. Does this sort of tell us more than we knew before about Republicans and tax policy and Republicans, billionaires who love Republicans and their tax policy?
Well, I mean, it lays it all on the table. In some senses, we already knew this, right? I mean, the Republican Party is, at its core, the sort of existential core of the modern post-Reagan Republican Party is tax cuts for wealthy people. That, if there's one thing that everybody gets behind, the one thing that the party has, the one policy the party has become a vessel for, is that. That's what the conservative movement and the modern Republican Party embody fundamentally. And this is the most sort of bald-faced, naked, intense kind of class politics, frankly. This is just self-interest. I mean, when you think about what kind of money is on the table, when you think about the tax cuts that are currently being debated, think about what a marginal tax increase or keeping the Bush rates means for the Koch brothers or other billionaires in perpetuity, right? Because we're not talking about a sunset. So extend it out 20, 30 years, take the current present discounted value, and what you arrive at is that it is rational to spend tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars now to forestall that eventuality. That's the situation we're faced with.
I feel like it was understood before, and it was sort of, when you boiled down Democratic versus Republican in terms of what they really mean in American politics, it was understood before that we're talking about Republicans really representing moneyed interests. And a lot of them don't even contest that. They talk about essentially the rich people as job creators. You know, they're okay with that as their agenda. It's not a slur against the party to say that. What I think feels new, though, is to have 3 people giving 91% of the funding to the biggest Republican interest group in the election. To have it be such small numbers of people. I mean, we're in a situation where the whole country could essentially be in a Michael Bloomberg for mayor situation.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And what it does is it embodies one of the most kind of undercovered and poorly understood but important trends in American political economy over the last 30 years. And that is this. Yes, okay, we all know the rich has gotten richer. There's been more inequality. But what's really happened is that the further you go up the income scale, the higher the rate of return has been. So when you look at the top 10%, okay, they've gotten richer. The top 1% have gotten richer much more and much faster than the top 10%. The top 10th of the top 1%. The top 100th of the top 1%. So the further up you go, the more the money is pooled and collected. And what it ultimately does, aside from whatever inequities it sort of produces and what other kind of risks it produces to the financial system, it produces a political system that fundamentally starts to verge on oligarchy. It starts to verge on a system that is dysfunctional because, particularly with Citizens United now, the amount of money that is pooled at the top really does begin to pose a threat to general popular democracy. And I know that's sort of an extreme thing to say, but at a certain point we are staring in the face of something really kind of ominous. And I feel like this election may be such a turning point.
Yeah, it's a face in profile on a gold dime of David Koch. Briefly, Chris, we are out of time, but I just want to get your brief reaction to this news tonight that Speaker Nancy Pelosi may be rethinking the Democrats' resistance to holding a vote on tax cuts before the election. Is that a good move in your mind?
It is a good move. I mean, look, Nancy Pelosi is not the problem, right? I mean, people are frustrated with the Democrats and frustrated with the House Democrats. Nancy Pelosi, I think, has done a pretty remarkable job over the last 2 years, and I think she understands all the political arguments you've been making, that I've been making, that Keith Olbermann has been making, that a whole host of people have been making watching this unfold. I think Nancy Pelosi understands those arguments. The question is, can she basically get the blue dogs on board with that? And if she essentially bluffs them into it, she says, look, we're going to hold a vote, you know, maybe she can kind of convince them that this is in their best interest. It's crazy that she has to do that convincing, but yes, it is a good idea, and I'm glad to see that's back on the table.
Washington editor of The Nation magazine and MSNBC contributor and all-around jack-in-the-box whenever we need him to be. Hey, it's Chris Hayes. Thank you very much, Chris.
Have a great weekend, Rachel. Thank you.